Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, which drops tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. And, of course, it is brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. You can get odds on the Eagles' opening week game against the Atlanta Falcons. They are favored. They are a 3.5-point underdog, I should say, in that game against the Falcons on the road, as it looks like, Geoff Mosher, that we don't need to wait for the primetime special. We apparently have the entire Eagles schedule out and ready to dissect. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. You must have seen more than me. I've been in and out of a little bit lately, so I've only seen I know they're playing Vegas. I know that obviously they're playing Atlanta in the opener. I know they're not playing on Thanksgiving, which fans probably like Thanksgiving games. Media and reporters, not so much. We like to be home with our families. Yeah. So I'm not upset about that. But I have not seen the whole wind down yet. So you can tell it to me.
Yeah, well, all right. Well, I will tell it to you. This is good. Since you haven't seen it, I will kind of give it to you in its form here. Let me see if I can bring it up on the schedule.
Wait, you know what? I do know that they also play, 49ers week 2 at home and then Chiefs week 3 at home?
They play the 49ers week 2 at home. They play I don't think it's the Chiefs in week 3. I think they play the Chiefs in week number 4. I will bring it up on the schedule here for you so that you can see it as well. I think that should bring it up on the schedule. There you go. All right. Now, this is not confirmed, all right? This is not confirmed, but I think most tweets that I've seen, I've cross-referenced, and it shows that these are pretty much accurate, okay? So you've got Atlanta in week 1, San Francisco in week 2, at Dallas on Monday night. There's only 2 primetime games. Even with the Eagles being as bad as they were, Geoff, they usually put Dallas and Philly and New York and Philly typically get a primetime game in there. I was a little surprised that they only have 2 primetime games. One of them is against Dallas. The other one is against Tampa on a Thursday night.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there. I heard this might be the case. Now I see it's the reality. Just 2 preseason games, 2 primetime games is staggeringly low. Even for an Eagles team coming off a losing year, Mike, they usually, just based on market size alone and the fact that their games against the Giants, the Cowboys, and Washington always tend to be, because of the market sizes of all the teams involved, tend to be really big draws on primetime, whether the team is good or not. That really is surprising to me that there is only 2. If this is accurate, yes. So this is a @leaks NFL, so that's a new site for me, or Twitter account for me. So we'll see if that's true.
Well, I've seen some of guys. Zach Berman has been confirming a lot of these. I've seen a lot of the games have been confirmed by a lot of people so far. So yes, I've been saying this is not 100% accurate, but there's a lot of people confirming these dates. Now I don't have the times and all that stuff, but I look at so Kansas City at Carolina, the game on Thursday night, Tampa Bay, at Vegas, at Detroit. They play back-to-back road games in weeks 7 and 8. Everything else is back and forth for the first 7 weeks of the season. Home away, home away, home away. Like last year, they had that daunting part where they played New Orleans, Seattle, Green Bay. There is not one part of this schedule that is like, woof, there's a rough patch in there. The only thing is, and I don't know if you could see it, the last 6 weeks of the year, they have the 2 straight games at MetLife. They play the Giants and the Jets on the road in 13 and 14. Their bye week isn't until week 14, but in the end, at the end of the year, they play
got to be a division game,
4 straight division games to close out the year. 4 straight division games, but 3 of the 4 are at home. They play Washington, New York, Washington, and they close the year up against Dallas.
Ooh, that's tough that they get Washington 2 times out of the last 4 years. That's only tough depending on how you view Washington. I think with that defense that they're going to be a very difficult team throughout the course of the year.
Yeah.
It's not that you don't fear well, maybe as an Eagles fan, you do fear Ryan Fitzpatrick because he seems to light up the scoreboard every time they play him. And now he's surrounded by a team that's got some pretty good offensive weapons and a really good defense. This is probably the best overall team. Hard to believe because he's been in the league for so long, but that he has been the starting quarterback for. So if he can just kind of be managed, this is like, you remember the Broncos? It's not a great apples to apples. Remember when the Broncos won the Super Bowl, but Peyton Manning clearly wasn't who he was supposed to be, for most of his career.
Yeah.
But they managed him. They had such a great defense and a pretty good running game that they managed him there at the end. So that's the type of
he's never made the playoffs.
Washington to be. Yeah, I know. That's unbelievable that he's never been in the playoffs.
I agree with you. Their defense is very, very going to be very, very challenging and very, very difficult. And I think Washington. Now the difference is if you looked at there's another. The Eagles have the easiest schedule in the league this year, and it's not close. Their winning percentage of teams from last year is only .430, Jeff. And if you look at that schedule, only 3 of those opponents had a winning record last year.
Well, hard to believe. I don't put much stock into it. I mean, if Dallas stays healthy, they're going to be pretty good with Dak Prescott, and that at least they're going to score points. I look at the first pocket of the schedule. You go down to Atlanta, then you got San Francisco, then you got Dallas, then you have Kansas City. And you think about the Eagles defense going through a major transition right now. And I don't know that I'm not saying I think the Eagles defense is going to be bad, but I think it's going to be a difficult first month as they transition to an entirely new scheme. You see that pretty frequently. You're facing at least 3 quarterbacks out of the 4 teams. I don't know what San Francisco is going to be doing. If Garoppolo is there, then you can say 4 pretty experienced quarterbacks and 4 pretty good offenses there. I have 2 very good ones with Atlanta and Kansas City. Atlanta's been bad the last few years, but they've been able to score points. It just gave up they've hemorrhaged points on the other side.
Yeah.
So, and obviously Dallas with Dak last year was on a record-setting scoring pace until he got hurt. So it's not easy goings for the Eagles defense in the first month of the season.
No, and we'll break it down through pockets. I like that, Jeff. 4-4-4. That first game of the year. Hey, Kyle Pitts, welcome to the NFL. You get to face the worst secondary anyone's ever possibly seen.
Yeah.
More news on that in just a minute, though. By the way, but you got Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Matt Ryan, Kyle Pitts. So the Eagles are going to have to match up with that kind of offense. And you mentioned San Francisco. The one thing when they played the 49ers. They beat the 49ers. It was one of the few wins they had. Now, both those teams were decimated by injuries, but the 49ers have a ton of speed, offensively, very creative. And then, of course, Dallas with Dak back, and that's a Monday night game. And then, of course, you got Patrick Mahomes in that team. So those first 4 games, all intriguing. But, Carolina, Tampa Bay, Vegas, and Detroit, you got 3 out of 4 on the road in that little pocket right there, but only – Tampa Bay of that group had a winning record last year, and, those seem like some winnable games.
Yeah, Carolina, it's almost like the Spider-Man meme, like everybody they needed a cornerback, they needed a wide receiver, and they needed some offensive line help. So they're similar teams. They'll probably, they'll be on Sam Darnold, so they're going to be going through an adjustment also with a new quarterback as well. So that should be an interesting game where you see 2 evenly matched type teams. And this is how I like to go through the schedule. I don't do the win-loss thing. I get it. It's fun. I have nothing against people who do, but I don't. Tampa Bay, obviously that's going to be a difficult one. Defending Super Bowl champs, short rest. At least you get them at home. But then you kind of look at it in the bigger picture now. It's like 4 of your first 6 games are against some pretty good quarterbacks there. So that's pretty rough as well. Then you go out to Vegas. It's a team that, I can see that being like one of those like 38-33 type games because neither of them scare you defensively, but they both have some decent offenses. Obviously, it'll be the first time for the Eagles out in a new stadium there. That's going to be a big Eagles fan trip.
I already had somebody text in. It was like, I'm already booking my flight. I said, you tell Philadelphia fans you get to hang out in Vegas and go to a football game. I mean, that place. And it's like, of all the road games this year, that's like if you're like, hey, I want to pick one road game, it's Vegas or what, Atlanta?
Atlanta's always a good road trip. Absolutely. Denver in, let's see, what month let's see, because we don't have weeks here. So that's October. Early November. Not the best. But it is a nice city if you catch it on a nice weather day. But yeah, this doesn't have the
Vegas
road trips here. Vegas, there's Vegas, and then there's every other trip.
Well, and the fact that 2 of your road games are at MetLife Stadium because you're playing the
Right.
Giants and the Jets. But that's interesting, too. You could drive up there 2 straight weeks and go see them play on the road. So that next pocket of game, you get Justin Herbert in there.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, so real quick, you in that second pocket, you're going to get Sam Darnold, Tom Brady. You could get Derek Carr. You could get Aaron Rodgers in that game.
Yeah, we'll see.
And not Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff. So you'll get Jared Goff. The next pocket, you'll get Herbert. You could get Aaron Rodgers in Denver.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know who's going to be the quarterback in New Orleans, and then you're going to get Daniel Jones there.
Yeah. And, to go back to that second stretch, 5 through 8 there are beatable teams in the Panthers, the Lions, and the Raiders, but unfortunately 3 of those 4 games are on the road. So where you're just not expecting the team to be as good because that historically you're not. So that's the difficult part of that. But then, so the Chargers are going to be an interesting team. You're right. A lot of teams with either new quarterbacks or new coaching staffs. That'll be really interesting. Chargers, Denver, Saints are, the new era without Drew Brees. I mean, you look at that 4 right there, and this is when you're in November. So as a team, you're trying to get your identity. You remember the Chip Kelly's first year?
Yep.
How everybody got excited about the first win over Washington, and oh my God, his offense is amazing. And then they went and got their asses kicked by Kansas City and Denver, right, to come careening right back to earth. And you realize, you know what, this thing's going to be a little bit of a transition, which it was. It was kind of a roller coaster year, and then they finished, I believe, with 9 wins or 10 wins.
They were 10-6 that first year,
yeah. Yeah. So this is similar.
Well, but that was very similar to what I've been saying. The year before, they were 4-12, and they had all the injuries on the offensive line. They were a mess. That was the year that guys were hurt left and right. And then remember, late in that year, in Andy's last year, LaShawn McCoy got hurt. Deshaun Jackson got hurt. I mean, guys were getting hurt left. Now, it was very reminiscent of what happened last year. And then Chip comes in. You get the new coach, and the offensive line is back and healthy. They drafted Lane Johnson, and they had Michael Vick came in, and boom, that team kind of just took off. So I feel like this year and that year, are the 2 years together are very comparable of how these things could go. And this schedule, it doesn't have that pocket where you're like, oh, man, that's a brutal stretch here. The only thing is you got that last stretch of games where you got the Giants and the Jets on the road, then the 14th week bye, and then you got 5 out of 6 NFC East games. I've never even seen that before. I've been doing this my whole life, it feels like. I've never seen 5 out of 6 games in the division.
Well, the last few years, they've ended with 3 straight division games. Or 4, no, did they end up with 4 last year? I forget, but it's been something similar to that.
I've seen 3. I've seen them play 3 straight NFC East games. I don't know that I've ever seen them play 4, and never 5 out of 6. I mean, that is unheard of to me.
It does seem that way, and it seems obviously the NFL has been doing that intentionally over the last few years.
The last couple years,
loading.
The last couple years, they've been trying to play division games the last 2 weeks of the year. And for whatever reason, they got 3, I think, last year. I think you're right. I think they played Washington.
No, it wasn't last year, but it was 2 years ago where they ended on it was 4. It was Giants, Washington, Dallas, New York. All right, that was right after the Miami loss. Remember when everybody, was like, oh, this team stinks, and then they went and won those 4 straight division games.
I remember somebody arguing with you about that.
Yeah, I don't know. It was probably some low-rate sports talk guy. I have no idea. But yeah,
the game
right.
That losing to the Dolphins that year really didn't matter all that much.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
But now I'm starting to, I got in front of me. I'm looking at some past years where you just don't see 4 straight games and 5 out of 6. So that is an interesting. It's hard to say if that's a brutal pocket or just an interesting one because the division is so haywire every year. It's hard to know if it's going to be good or not.
I'll tell you what it should do, though, Jeff. It will keep you saying, well, if they can just win these 5, it's going to keep them in the division race, you would think, right?
Yeah, but only if you're only saying that if, you're going into the December and Washington and New York or Dallas, one of those teams is kind of like what we've seen the last year. If one of those teams is, 8-4, then you're going to be like, man, that's not as, it's a tough game, especially if the Eagles aren't that good. So I kind of think this might be a bold statement. I kind of think this coming year is going to be one of those rare years where there's going to be a pretty good NFC East team. I don't know who it's going to be. it's probably either going to be Dallas or Washington. New York could definitely be. I mean, they've made a lot of improvements, but I do feel like there'll be a team that's going to actually maybe win 11 games.
Wow.
In this division.
Well, Philadelphia.
I feel like they've been building up. Somebody's got to at this point.
Philadelphia plays the easiest schedule in terms of opponents' winning percentage, 430. Dallas is the second worst at 452. New York's is 474, and Washington plays the most difficult one in the division. Their opponents' combined winning percentage is 504, so just about 500. So the Eagles and Dallas have the two easiest schedules in the entire NFL based on last year's records.
Which means nothing, as we know, because I'm sure everybody who saw the Eagles on their schedule last year was not thinking, that's a 4-11 team right there. It's an easy W.
No, and if you remember, Jeff, Vegas last year, the over-under for wins for Philadelphia was 10.
Yeah, I remember. That was pretty high. That was interesting.
Yeah, so
I do think the first four games, though, is a fairly brutal stretch for a team that has a new coach, new scheme, the fact that there probably won't be OTAs again the way we know it, and the fact that you've got some good quarterbacks there with Mahomes, Prescott, Matt Ryan, and I have no idea what San Francisco is going to do, but it doesn't seem to matter. I mean, they always seem to be able to produce a pretty decent offense, even with their backup. So I feel like that's probably the toughest part of their schedule, given the external circumstances around them as well.
Right. Well, interestingly enough, of those four, only one of them made the playoffs last year. And as we said, only 4 teams in total on this schedule made the playoffs last year. 2 of them went to the Super Bowl, Kansas City and Tampa Bay. New Orleans, who will have a new quarterback, and then Washington, who you play twice. So you have 5 games in total against a playoff team from last year. Every other game on your schedule is against a non-playoff team. Now, some of them had injury issues. They've made changes, yada, yada. But that being said, that's why the people are saying, how do they have the easiest schedule? That's why only 4 of these teams actually made the playoffs. And only 3 of them, if you remember, Washington was sub 500. Only 3 of them actually made the playoffs. All right, Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. Quickie couple things. Jeremy Fowler reporting today the Eagles are one of 14 teams interested in Steve Nelson. Is that just due diligence or legitimate, hey, we need a corner and this guy makes us better?
Of course they'd be interested. Adam Kaplan had them being interested in TJ Carey a couple of weeks ago. They were. He signed elsewhere. Steven Nelson, obviously, if that's true, and when you start to hear 14, you wonder if that's agent driven or if Jeremy has gone and called all 14 teams to try to sniff around. He's a good reporter. So look, I'm not going to doubt that Steven Nelson has a market. I'm sure he does. But as I always say, when you have a market, that usually means a bidding war ensues and money is better than you would think. Now, if that was the case, I would wonder why he's still unsigned right now. Maybe he's looking for weighing money versus opportunity. If you're looking for opportunity with the Eagles tomorrow because you're a starter.
Absolutely.
As soon as you sign that paper. If you're looking for money or championship, playoff potential, you're looking at other teams.
Well, as the tweet said, he continues to be patient, waiting for right fit and opportunity.
Yeah. In other words, he doesn't want to go to OTAs.
It says also,
he may not want to go to training camp.
Says Steven Nelson's market has been strong since becoming a free agent.
Yeah, I can believe that only because he's a starting cornerback in a league where everybody, including the Eagles, are looking for better starting cornerbacks. Now, my intel from the NFL personnel people I've spoke to is that Steven Nelson's a good corner, but not a great corner, and tends to view himself as better than he actually is. But when you're comparing him to, I guess, Kevon Seymour and Graylin Arnold, and
he's an all-pro.
And James, of course, you're like, oh, I'll take him, right?
Right. He's an all-pro next to this group of guys.
Exactly.
All right, so there's the leaked schedule. Now, who knows? Tonight at 8 o'clock, they could release this whole thing, and we could have a whole new schedule tomorrow. Wouldn't that be fun?
Well, I think a good homework assignment would be to find out the last time the Eagles played 2, I would say even 3 or fewer primetime games. I would have to think it's been a while.
I can't remember. Yeah, I can't remember the last time. Number one, they haven't had a Sunday night game. There's not even a Sunday. They got one Monday and a Thursday. That's it. They have, to my knowledge, they are not playing on any of the holidays. There's 2 Christmas games this year. They did not get one of those. They're not playing in London. They're not playing in Mexico City. They're not playing anywhere but home at 1 or 4 o'clock in every game except for 2. Now, if they have a good season for whatever reason, those games can get flexed in the back end of the season, and you can get flexed into a. Can you get flexed into a Monday night game now? Is that part of the new?
I think you can now. I think, which is crazy, but apparently you can.
Does that start this year or next year?
I'd have to go back and look. I thought it did start this year, but it might be next.
Right.
And just for perspective, I don't think the Eagles ever had as little buzz as they had in maybe 2016. Now, I know they had Carson Wentz, but remember, he wasn't even supposed to start at the time they're making the schedule in April, right? He's behind Sam Bradford.
Right.
And Doug Peterson had to have the least amount of buzz for any head coach that year and in a while in Eagles history, and yet they still played 4 primetime games. They've got 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that I'm looking. So that's double the amount that they got this year. So I mean, that's kind of crazy to me that they even had a Monday night game against the Bears. Remember, that's Carson Wentz's week 2, his first Monday night game. They won. They start 3-0 that year.
Yep.
And then they played their typical Thursday night game against the Giants, and then they played a Monday night game against the Packers. So, I mean, it's shocking to me that if this is true, I have to couch that they would only have 2 primetime games.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I saw that. And the fact that, New York and Philly play Sunday night football, it seems like every single year. And they
Dallas,
are not playing.
definitely.
Yeah, and Dallas, too, and there's nothing there. And if you remember, Philly and Washington played that last Sunday night game. Now, that was flexed into that spot last year, so you could see some flexes. Josh is telling me after week 12, they can flex the Monday night football games. So,
okay, that makes more sense. Yeah. All right, down the stretch.
There you
go.
Also, it looks like there's going to be fans back at the link this year. Full house.
Wow, that's great. I did see that. Obviously everything right now is kind of we expect, we anticipate based on the health and guidance of the official that their advice that they're getting. So I hope that that's the case, man. That would be a great thing for us as a country, and hopefully media can get back in there too.
Yeah, I'm hoping that everything is back to normal in terms of these Zoom calls are over. I know it's probably convenient when they send you. I got the text today, hey, all the rookies, and you don't have to go over there, and you can just pop on Zoom. But it's not the same, right?
Yeah. No, journalism is not supposed to be convenient, right? It's
Correct.
Reporting is not supposed to be convenient. You're supposed to work for your angles and information.
That's well put. Geoff Mosher at Inside Birds. Follow that account on Twitter for all of their platforms, content, and of course the new Inside the Birds podcast will drop tomorrow morning at 6. And tomorrow, right here, we will officially have the schedule. We'll get Adam Kaplan's breakdown of that and so much more. He's Geoff Mosher. This is Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Thank you, Geoff.
You got it, brother.